the government does not really want to steal your wealth during hyperinflation. They want inflation to be slow because they steal your wealth as you're working for dollars that buy you less and less and less. And as you're accumulating dollars that buy you less and less and less. So the inflation, look, when they were setting this thing up, and if you read all the documents, the government wants to tax you, but they don't want you to realize that you're being taxed. So they don't want to go through legislation, which if they raise the taxes and they do it through legislation, you're going to hear about it, you're going to know about it, and you might not like it. So when they created the fiat money system to begin with, they built inflation into it. Inflation is not a monetary phenomenon. And even Powell admitted this the other day in front of the Senate Banking Committee. It is a fiat money phenomenon. Okay, so I'm in a normal economy that is in a supply-demand dynamic, so a real market, you would see gold and silver go like this as the economy shifts, right? But it never goes to zero. The dollar's been doing, it's been collapsing slowly since 1913. So again, the collapse, the overnight collapse is coming. I can't tell you when because it's based upon people retaining confidence in the currency. When that's lost, that's when you'll really see the hyperinflation kick into gear. And this is also why it's so critically important for central banks to gauge inflation expectations. Because if you're expecting higher inflation, it's kind of like, then you recognize the inflation. And when inflation happens too quickly, like it is these days, it's really obvious how fast prices are going up. And so that it kind of creates this doom loop, right? Where the public expects higher inflation, loses more confidence in the currency, that then more inflation happens, then they expect even more, et cetera, et cetera. Before you know it, it happens slowly until it happens really quickly. That's why even if you have a portfolio that you choose to continue to hold, then truly diversify by having physical gold to maintain the current value, purchasing power value of that portfolio. That's critical. Any of those assets, in order to insure them, because of course not everybody can take a withdrawal. If it's in a 401k, you're going to have some limitations on that. If you're in a 403b and you're still working there, you're not going to be able to do anything with that. So, these are things that you have to look at. That's why it's important to have a plan and to have your goals established. So, and we can help you with that. That's what we do. Now, during hyperinflation, what is actually happening is that they are resetting the debt system. And it's a way for an advanced economy to pay off the debt that they've accumulated with dollars that have virtually no value, right? So that's part of the strategy that we utilize here at ITM, by the way, is the same strategy that the governments use. Additionally, while it takes more and more dollars to buy the same thing, let's say you took on mortgage debt 20 years ago. Well, nominally, that payment has remained the same, right? If it was, just to make life easy, if it was $1,000 when you first took out the mortgage and you have a fixed rate 30-year mortgage and it's 20 years later, you're still paying $1,000. But your nominal rate of income has increased, even though the value of the dollar has gone down. So it's easier for you to service that fixed rate debt. So that's not how they steal your wealth, but that's how they get you to go along with it and then still be able to take on more debt. So the real wealth, the real theft comes leading up to the hyperinflation. The hyperinflation is just the blow off top where the government can restructure and reset and pay off that debt with fiat currencies, government currencies that have no value. You know, they don't want to get into a hyperinflationary cycle, but that's what's inevitable to happen. It's happened way over 4,800 times without any exception. And that's because the currency is based on debt. And from what I've been able to discern so far, even the new currencies, the central bank digital currencies, are still justified to be created by debt. Now, maybe they'll come up with something else, but they have to burn off, they have to get rid of that debt in order to be able to start fresh. They can't take on another debt currency at the hyper levels of debt that we're already in. And keep in mind, the only difference between inflation and hyperinflation is the speed of that inflation. If the government knows that we're all hoarding cash, gold, and silver, first of all, you probably have less than 2% of the population that is accumulating gold and silver or is brave enough to hold cash outside of the system. That percentage might be higher on the cash. So can they demonetize that cash? 100% yes. If a government can say this is, you now have to use this as your tool of barter, they can also say no longer a tool of barter, as we've witnessed in many countries, Venezuela being one, India being another. So they can certainly do that. Can they make it impossible for us to exchange that at some point? Well, if they did an overt confiscation, then it would be, usually too, understand that when they do that, there's a certain level that they're going to allow you to have. So the last time, I don't know off the top of my head what it was for silver, but for gold, it was 5 ounces of gold. So there are lots of different forms that you can hold it, though I personally like the collectible form. That's the only kind of gold that I buy outside of, jewelry. But I don't buy the jewelry for the same goal as I do the coins. So, no. And they tried that with silver. President Johnson tried that with silver when they took the silver out of the coinage and said, if you hoard it, actually came right out and said, if you try to hoard silver, we will crash that market. Not exactly those words, but that was very clearly the sentiment, which is amazing that an American president could come out and say, we will manipulate the market if you're not doing it the way we want to. And they have ever since then. They've manipulated both the gold and the silver market.